So thank you very much for taking the time to speak to me today. As you know, we're running this campaign, this event around specifically for lesbian and bisexual women, to change the narrative of the conversation that was very, very sort of prominently embedded in the community was, unless you had sex with a cis heterosexual man, you didn't have to have cervical screening. And we now know that that isn't the case. You know, the virus that causes cervical cancer can actually be transmitted by skin. And it can also be transmitted via sex toys. So, you know, it's been a challenge to now go back and have that conversation, and because it has been embedded for so long. I mean, what has your experience been going back from sort of past to now? Have you had the conversation with people?
I have in my own head, I think, and I think the first thing to say is whether someone, no matter what someone's sexuality, I think most women do not like to have a smear test, regardless of their sexuality. And for me, being a woman at all was a difficult thing to deal with, never mind going for a smear test. And it took me a long time to actually go. But I think we're all human beings. And I think that's the first thing to get over, actually physically having someone, you know, do a smear test on you. And everyone has the same issue with it. So compounding all of the problems with sexuality, or worrying about that. And also just cancer. It's just this thing, ostrich will just not bother with that one. It's not going to affect me, so I'm okay. So I think all of the above is possibly a lot of my thinking from teenage years on. But even people, my own peers, they're like, oh God, oh no, I've got to go for a smear. It's not something I think that's going to go away anytime soon. I think what we have to get over is that with technology, etc., that if you go more quickly and do these things, then the benefits far outweigh that 5 minutes on a couch. Embarrassing as it is, and uncomfortable as it often is, and painful sometimes. So I'd say that's my main sort of take on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, sort of what we're trying to achieve in this program is to sort of make people aware of the things that they can ask for to make it a more comfortable experience. So you can actually ask them to make sure that they have more than one size speculum. It's not one size fits all. And actually,
see, I hadn't known that until recently.
So this is I don't think enough people are having this conversation and actually going, well, no, they don't have to use, because you do.
Maybe they're not given the choice as well, potentially, you know.
Yeah, no, well, this is it. And I didn't know that until I started this program, and I was like, oh, no way. Like, because it is a prominent thing that's used in the community, and also skin. So even hand to skin can transmit the HPV virus. So, you know, it's quite, when I thought about it, I thought, gosh, you know, there is actually a lot that people don't realize. And I've gone with a few of my friends and had their first smear test and held their hand, and, you know, and sort of made sure that they were had various size speculums, that they weren't having to, you know, one size fit all, because, you know, there are a lot of differences. We're not all one size fits all, just like men are not all one size fits all. But, you know, women are somehow expected. But, you know, there are things that people can ask for. You can actually ask for somebody to go in with you. You know, the things that you can do to make it a more comfortable experience. And, you know, sort of taking the sexuality element out of it, you know, the other thing that we're all looking at is also how to make it a more inclusive screening process for gender. Because, you know, that we wanted to do it separately, because, you know, sexuality and gender is a very separate conversation.
Yeah.
But there is that sort of, even within just the LGBTQ community, there's a lot of queer, non-binary and transgender people that won't go for cervical screening because of the dysmorphia that comes with having these body parts.
Growing up as I did, thinking that I was possibly transgender. In those days, there wasn't that language, and I was, as far as I was concerned, I wasn't a woman, and I wasn't a man either, and I had years of not being sure what I actually was. But if that's how I felt, I can imagine how it would feel to not want to present yourself there and put yourself in that position because you're mocked. I mean, there were times, I've been several times for different things in hospital, and I've heard them whispering behind the curtain, so you can imagine how someone would feel. It's not allowed anymore, thank God, for that kind of behaviour, but I'm sure it still goes on.
Absolutely.
Fear of it would probably outweigh your necessity to go and be tested.
Well, this is the thing. I think that's then now stopping people. They would rather just wait and see. Mm-hmm. And it's like what you've said, working on this program around the screening programs that are out there, the earlier that anything is found, the better outcome. And especially with cervical cancer, because it is non-symptomatic. And by
something else that's come out of what you're saying just now, and I was struck by, is the skin contact causing this. I think in the last 2 years since the COVID explosion, our awareness of how quickly and easily we can spread stuff. I'm only too aware when I tour, I meet people, and every year, every time I've toured, I've got a bad cold. And we laughed at people from Asian countries wearing masks, but we're not laughing now. And I actually think that's one of the big surprises. I think our cleanliness, excuse the phrase, stinks. And I think, we have to be a bit more fastidious in our cleanliness when we're having contact with someone else.
So, I think the more that we can have it, and the other thing is as well, is that I think also sex has always been taboo, and I think that for me, we have to take the stigma out of talking about sex and making sure that, it's not even just about changing the conversation in sort of the more sort of older LGBTQ community, but it's also about having those conversations with the younger girls that are coming up, and educating them about cleanliness, about using protection, and making sure that if they don't sort of have those protective barriers, that they need to then make sure that they're going for their screening.
But I think there's certainly we used to talk about permissive society, because I'm 63 now, and so we're going back 40 years, and they were talking about permissive society and who are misses and all of this. But I do think through social media, people's learning experiences are through social media, as opposed to proper places with proper information, and people are learning about sex but it's not about love. It's all about sex, and I guess when you're growing up, there's that kind of initial excitement, etc., and it's not going to happen to me. Men in particular, young men in particular, not wearing condoms, it's like the women's responsibility, that stupid thing. I think, young women growing up will be absolutely thinking this is not going to happen to me. Because for women who are not going out with men, they will think, or cis heterosexual, they will not, they're thinking this is going to happen to me until it does.
Absolutely. And, and as I was saying, the thing with cervical cancer is it takes 10 years between your stages. That's how much of a slow cancer this is. And that if it gets found, it's generally in stage 4.
It's well established.
Which then it's well established. And we're so lucky as part of the program. We have Dr. Mina Desai, who has dedicated her life to cervical cancer prevention. And she's educated me so much. And she was like, 10 years between these stages, and if we can get girls to go and have their smears as part of a health check rather than it being almost like it's a cancer screening. We're not screening for cancer. We're checking, and now they don't even check for cells; they check for the virus. Mm-hmm. So they've even changed the way they do the testing. Yeah. You could literally eradicate cervical cancer.
Well, my mum had ovarian cancer and died of ovarian cancer, so I'm pretty aware, and I've had tests and things. So I'm sort of aware of it now more than I would have done when I was younger too. But it's easy to shout backwards and go, no, you need to, I know I didn't, but you need to. I think spreading that knowledge is really, really important.
And I think, you're right in that you've brought it up, everybody in every community, regardless of your orientation, we all have a period in our lives where we are a little bit more excitable and promiscuous. And, and I think if we can educate people now, so that they are having these sort of encounters, that they know to use a condom on their sex toy. Like women who sleep with women don't think that condoms are a necessity, because they think that it's generally either a gay sex or a cishet sex that would use a condom for protection. But if you're sharing sex toys, use a condom.
It's interesting, isn't it? I don't know if you know any facts, but it's interesting, the women who've had cervical cancer, who are lesbian or, specifically lesbian, say, is there any way of, is it a big surprise when they have the cancer if they've not been aware of it? There's no way of sort of going through everyone who's had it and going, well, these people are straight, these are not, these are lesbians, etc. So I just kind of wondered if it's one of those things that it's a growing awareness or.
So recently, obviously, the medical statistics behind our community, the LGBTQ community, has actually been very, very minimal, because as a community, we've just not wanted to tell people. And there's a lot of, I don't know if you've heard the conversations about even just telling your GP your sexual orientation. Well, why should I have to tell them my orientation? But the thing is that it's so that we can start to collect this medical data. So at this point in time, there's not really much telling us how many women who have had cervical cancer actually are lesbian. And I think, this is what we're trying to do as a program, is to try and get that information. So let's get this information. Let's see what we could have done. And also, would they be willing to share their story, to start educating people on how important this is.
I think talking it's one of my favourite things, but talking is a powerful tool. It's almost like testifying your own experiences. I don't know if anyone who's had cervical cancer is going to be involved in talking about anything, but I think that would be quite useful as well. So I don't know.
Yes. So there you go, Horse McDonald doing a call out to other lesbian and bisexual women to get involved.
Well, I'm obviously happy to share this, because I think, like you say, the people who are anonymous here, and I think that's very powerful and very important. And I think every single woman I know does not like having a smear. I think a lot of lesbians do feel like they get missed out of things, or they're being sidelined, etc. So I think it's really important what you're doing. So, obviously I, for one, will be, I can share anything you want me to share, about it. I'm more than happy to do that. Well, at the end of the day, it's a no-brainer, is it? It's like you just have to do anything you can. And if I reach, 1,000 people, those 1,000 people will reach another 10,000 people, etc. That's just the way it works. And I think the other thing that has come into my head as you're talking, you're saying 25 to 30-year-olds, I think the awareness of having to have a smear has taken years for my generation to realise. but it starts to fade. People need a constant reminder about it. It's the same with, I suppose, all cancers. You have to check, you have to investigate, you have to go soon, sooner rather than later. So I think on a regular basis, information like this has to go out.
Absolutely. No, I agree.
Hmm.
So
let's do it.
Yes,